All right. So the first set of stretches we're going to pay attention to is going to be related to our neck. So this can be done seated. It can also be done standing if you prefer to stand right now. And so the first one is just very simple. We're just going to allow ourselves to tuck our chin towards our chest. So lowering your gaze, lowering your eyes. And if it's comfortable, even taking your gaze down towards the belly or the hips, and allowing your bottom jaw to unhinge from your top jaw. So you're not clenching your teeth closed together, you're leaving a little bit of space. And then from here, just checking in with the back of the neck and the shoulders, how that feels, what your experience is like, and if there's any pain, and seeing, what's that scale from 1 to 5, 5 being like, oh, I need to come out of this pose immediately. So from here, we're going to take the head and sit it up back on the neck. So it sounds silly, but take a moment. Do you feel like your head is situated centered on your head? And so the act of doing the opposite of centering our head and then recentering it can tell us a lot about, what is our natural position. And so perhaps you're someone who notices, oh, I lift my right shoulder while I'm sitting with my head up. Or, oh, I'm actually slightly leaning to the right. Now, we don't need to figure out why or how to fix it right now. We're just worried about paying attention, observing non-judgmentally to what we notice, to what we feel. So we're going to now go back. So allow your eyes. First, work with your eyes. Allow your eyes to start gazing up towards your eyebrows. Without even moving your head, you can probably start to feel some accentuation around the front of your throat, through the collarbones, even without tilting your head back. So for some of us, tilting our head back is not going to be comfortable or supportive today. So you can just work with the eyes and look up without moving the head back. And then the option for you, if you feel like you want to explore today, is to actually elongate the front of your throat and send your head slightly back. If there is a line that you can follow of a wall meeting a ceiling, unless your ceilings are really, really high, and seeing if you can gaze there. And again, checking in with the jaw. What are you doing? Are you clenching your jaw together, your teeth? Seeing if you can create some space, some distance between the lips and the teeth. Check in here. Scale of pain or discomfort or negative sensation from 1 to 5. What do you notice? And then slowly articulate your head to return back to what feels like center for you. So as you hold your head right up over your neck and shoulders, just take a moment, check in. Although I've asked you to meet center, do you feel centered? Do you feel like your head is in the center of your body? And for the most part, a lot of our body is not symmetrical. And so this is natural. And so you might just be noticing a natural accentuation of asymmetry. And so sometimes people freak out like, oh no, my shoulder is high, I gotta fix it. And sometimes it's just the way it is. Just being able to notice, recognize that. And then we'll start to work with bringing our right ear and just letting it gently lean in towards the right shoulder. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, especially if there's some aggravation there already in the neck. But then the intention here is with your right hand, bring it to the space above your collarbone on the left side. So if you're not too sure where it is, find that pointy landmark in front of your chest. And just let your hand sit above it. So it's almost like the circle, the bottom ridge of your wrist is just anchored and situated, balancing on your collarbone. So my fingers are actually wrapped around the shoulder. And as you hold that skin, take your left hand, bring it on top, just sort of cradling the hand And very gently think about pulling down on the skin towards your belly button as the head is reaching slightly to the right. So the intention here is actually the stretch on the left side, and we're just leaning the head to the right as a way to gather and have more space to gently pull down on the skin. So allow your head to come back to center, relieving your hands of pressure on your skin. And then we're going to reach our arms up and just take a moment. You can even look at yourself in the video. Is my left hand a little taller than my right hand? And that might be a result of just that little stretch we did. How do we feel in our extension and our ability to extend our arms right now? And then with our fingers reaching up, interlace your fingers together. Pull the inside of your palms towards the screen and start to round your spine. And if you're sitting in a chair with a back, even trying to push your back into the rest of your chair. Tucking your chin into your chest as a result. Feeling like your tailbone is tucking underneath you and collapsing a bit through the chest and the belly. Come back up to a tall spine, reaching your arms up as you do so. And then as you're in your chair, just start to lean a little bit to the right with your arms and your upper body. Think about reaching up to your ceiling the whole time with your fingers. Reach, reach, reach. Gently return to the midline. Release your hands and take a moment to check in with your experience of being in your body right now. Maybe checking in with your trigger points that you brought up today, or just felt sensation overall. And then we'll come to the other side. So we're going to let our left ear just gently lean in towards the left shoulder. You don't have to go far, just enough to expose more of the skin on the right side of your neck, throat. Again, releasing the bottom jaw from the top jaw, just to help in that effort of relaxation through the right side, stretching, elongating. And then again, finding your left finger and finding the right collarbone. So once you find that mound, we're going to be resting essentially the underside, sort of like the bottom of the cup of the wrist is sort of balancing there. And the fingers are gently rolled on top of the shoulder. Once you get that placement, a little bit, taking the right hand and bringing that on top or around the wrist, wherever you can create some additional pressure. And then as the head is in its to the left, gently think about pulling, pressing into your skin and pulling gently down the skin towards your belly button. And just continuing to keep soft the jaw. Keeping the breath soft. Might be shallow, that's all right. And then releasing the fingers, the hands, and resetting the head. We're going to interlace the fingers again, reach the fingers forward this time. Chin to chest. And we're going to reach them up. So reversing the way we came into this first time, and then leaning over to the left. And as you lean over to the left, just seeing what's capable, what capacity you have with the head rolling slightly left as well. Come back to the midline, reach your hands down. So the next one is focusing on the back of the neck. And so the back of our neck, depending on where the position of our head is over our neck and shoulders, can really dictate where we're going to feel discomfort. And so when our head is leaning up, so if we have a screen that's quite high, we're just going to be putting more pressure on sort of the mounds of the shoulders. And if we're tilting our chin down, we might be putting more pressure in our lower back, just as a general region. And so trying to get something right at eye level for you where your neck and shoulders can be easeful is most ideal if possible. So focusing here on stretching the back of our neck and shoulders. We're going to bring the hands forward, sort of bending at the elbows, creating these little cactus arms. You're going to bring your hands together or near each other. And you're going to start with your left hand. You're going to bring your left fingers and try to crisscross your elbows underneath each other. Now for us, we might not have the same ability to pull the wrists towards each other. Some of us can just create a fist and pull this way. Others are able to grab hold of the wrist, and some are able to grab hold of the fingers. And so just seeing where you are on that. And for some of us, it's just, we have the capacity to hold our shoulder mounds. So this is a good alternative. So wherever you are in that, think about propelling your shoulders away from your ears. So notice, are you pulling your shoulders up to your ears? Let them come away from the ears. And then same thing with your elbows, where you're holding your elbows really tight and close to your chest. Just try to pull them away, even if they're slightly touching the chest still. So this is called eagle arm pose. And so I'm going to invite you to start thinking about taking your gaze up to your right fingers or just up to your ceiling. So the gaze is up. I'm barely tilting my head back, just working with the gaze. Jaw relaxed. Now with your head continually aligned right over the center, try to gaze down to your elbows. And then gaze back up. Gaze down to your elbows again. And next time, take your gaze to the right corner of both of your eyes. Just gazing to the right to see your peripheral vision. Take your gaze back to the center, so you're probably looking at your hands. Then take your gaze only and look to the left. Great. Bring your gaze to wherever it's comfortable, wherever it feels natural, and take a gentle back bend here. This can also be done standing. And then do the opposite. So try to hug your elbows in towards your belly button, towards your stomach, tucking your chin to your chest. Come back up to center. Nice. And then let your arms unravel and do whatever you need to do to feel like I'm rejigging and I'm resetting to what feels comfortable. And then again, take a moment to check in. What do you notice as a result of what you've done thus far? What is there to observe? What is there to feel? What is there to experience? And there's no wrong thing to be experiencing. So if you're paying attention and you feel like you're quote unquote distracted by your environment, that's okay. That's something to observe. We don't need to observe and then pull, just observe. Very simple act. Simpler in words than action, maybe. And so we'll come to the eagle pose on the other side, but let's do it standing this time, and we'll move up to standing from there. So coming to stand where you are. I'm just gonna turn that here. Easier. So in your standing position, we're gonna take our arms again out to the sides. And this time, as we bring the hands close together, we're working with our right hand under our left elbow, crisscrossing. And then for some of us, we might have a different ability here in terms of grasping or reaching possible. And the alternative is always to sort of do a little bit of a hug here. It's a good way to, yeah. And then wherever you are in that, just notice, are you picking up your shoulders really high? Can you drop your shoulders away from your ears? And also think about, instead of pulling your elbows to your chest, try to pull your elbows forward and away from your chest. Now you might notice that as you lunge your arms forward, some of us will lunge our upper body forward. Can you do just the work of the elbows reaching? And then from here, turning this a little bit differently, I want you to start bending your knees. Gaze down as if you could gaze to the floor, although your elbows are probably in the way. And then start to balance on your left foot. Pick up your right leg as you stand tall. Continue to imagine you're gazing down to the floor. As you're standing here, take your gaze to your fingers. You might topple over a couple times. All good. Nice. We're going to set the foot down. And from here, start to take a halfway lift position. So kind of coming about 90 degrees, slight bend in the knees. With your left finger, so that's the underside, reach it to the ground as best as you can, even if that means you have to bend your knees a lot. And then take your right arm and reach it up to the sky, straighten your right leg, and bend your left knee a whole lot. And if you can't reach the ground with your left hand, you can reach your ankle of your right foot. You can also balance up on your hips if you prefer. Okay, so we won't stay here too long. We're going to start to reach the right hand towards the ground, and the knees a bit or a lot, whatever feels good. And then keeping the head heavy and shaking the head just a tiny bit, side to side. Great. So we're going to bend the knees coming up. Take your time. Stacking, stacking, stacking the body, thinking about each level from feet to crown of head. That's one level. Reaching to the top level is the crown of the head, reaching to the utmost top level, sky, or your roof at this point. So we're going to focus on our balancing pose on the right side with a different arm stretch. So we're going to lean into that right foot, take your hands and reach them to your left knee. So simple in form, maybe not so simple in practice. Now, as you're thinking about, or you're lifting your knee into your chest, think about straightening your hands. So if we have a bent elbow position, you might have to push your leg out a bit in order to get straight arm position. And you might wobble and fall and all sorts of things. Yeah. And some of us might even be able to grab hold of our foot. And you're like, hell no, then you don't really need to do that at all. Party trick time. And then relaxing your foot, your feet, relaxing your hands. Nice. And so we'll work with the hips and the upper body as well at the same time. So standing tall, you're gonna let your right fingertips just reaching down the length of your right leg. So I'm just very lightly up against my right leg. Take the left arm up to the ceiling. And as that's happening, just see how far down you can trickle your right hand until you come to a place where you can barely take in a breath. So we want to be able to take a breath, but meeting that point where we feel a little challenged in that breath and also challenged in the stretch itself. Nice. But not over challenging ourselves that we're having to just take a breath one at a time, like every other breath cycle. Right, so we're working with that left hip and then coming back up. Reach your right hand up to your ceiling and then do the left side. So reaching that left hand down. And again, it's just very lightly tracking down the left leg as the right arm arches up to the sky. And eventually you reach a point where you're like, oh, I just can't physically go any further. But see if you can stop before that point where you can still breathe. So some of us will be really good at pushing ourselves 110%, heaving and panting. So trying to meet, 80% perhaps instead of 110% of our capacity. Great, so we'll come on back, be able to navigate ourselves up. And then focusing here on our lower back. So from this point, we've done this before, but it's really helpful because it just gives us the ability to know where our pelvis is in relationship to our belly and to our legs. And so when our pelvis is off center for an extended period of time, and we're not inputting diversity in our movement practice, then this is when we can result in compression or just stiffness and general, discomfort. So we want to pay attention to our pelvis as a way to pay attention to how's my body doing? How can I support it? What can I do? So very simple, but I want you to imagine you have a hula hoop around your hips and you're trying to hit all 4 points of the hula hoop. So north, east, south, west as well. You can think of the directions. So move your hips and try to hit all 4 points. It might not look like a whole lot to your camera or feel like a whole lot to yourself, but you're just trying to hit all 4 points. I have a hand on my belly. I have a hand on my lower back, just to help me feel like, oh, I'm moving away from center. I'm moving away from the back. And try to do it just with your hips and not the whole body in the hula hoop range. So really pushing through the front of your pelvis, leaning into that right hip, leaning into the lower back, leaning into the left hip, leaning back into the front of the groin, and taking it really slow. And even though it might not feel like a lot, we're starting to really map out and create defined awareness of where our pelvis is in relationship to the rest of our body. Nice. So we'll come back to center. We're going to take that movement a lot more wider than we would probably with a hula hoop. So taking the movement and forgetting about the 4 points, but moving with a whole circle. So as you move with the whole circle, just allowing the arms to counterbalance you, going forward, and maybe they go to the sides. You can keep the arms quite loose here. And thinking about attention or bringing attention to your feet. So think about all 4 corners of your feet. The tops of your feet are sort of the tips of the toes and the mounds, the balls of the feet. Then you have the inner arches. Then you have the outer edges. And then you have the heels. See if you can create a hula hooping where you're actually putting pressure on all 4 points at some time. One time a little bit more balanced than the other. So we're working with our vestibular system, our proprioceptive system, and then our cues from inside and our cues from outside. So our interoception, and then our outer environment with our feet. Great, bring yourself back to center and really think about sturdying your feet into the ground as if trying to grab the ground with all 4 corners of your feet while not curling your toes into a tight fist. So grapple with the ground, spread through the toes, drop in through the inner arches, push in through the heels, unclench the glutes. And then I'm going to bring you through a gentle breathing practice here. So you can continue to do this standing. You can also do it sitting down, but the intention here is we want to pay attention to our feet as we're doing this breathing practice. So I'm going to invite you to just notice the next couple of breaths as it comes towards you. And just notice, where do you feel the breath sort of starting or beginning as you're breathing in and out? So as you breathe in, do you have a sense of where your breath is being created? Not anatomically, but what you can feel about that. So as I'm breathing, just as an example, I feel the breath really originating from sort of the lower rib area. And you don't need to have any anatomical instruction, just an awareness of the body. So the next time that you take a breath in, focus on the breath coming from the lower parts of your hips or the lower abdomen. So as you're breathing and you're expanding through your body, and if you need more support and education in that, your hands can be that. You can place your hands at the lower abdomen to help facilitate that felt sensation of moving outward and moving back in. As you exhale, moving outward and moving in. The whole time, remember that you have feet. That sounds silly, but just keep referring back to your feet. Oh, my feet are, I don't feel my feet. Okay, come back to the feet, continue breathing. So it's like this circular cycle of redirecting attention. Breath, feet, feet, breath. Oh, where are my feet? Okay, feet, breath. So creating this loop of attention, notice any distraction from that loop without having to push it away, just observe. And then allowing yourself to pay attention, take your breath up into your shoulder. So a little fun. So bring the shoulders up to your ears as you're breathing in, and then focus on the shoulders going down as you breathe out. Now, as you start to get aware of pulling the shoulders up and down, as you get used to it, again, bring your attention back to your feet. So I'll tell you what the purpose of the practice is after. So just pay attention to embodying the practice right now. So the shoulders go up as you're breathing in. Shoulders are going down as you're breathing out. You don't need to bring any particular rate of lifting or drawing away. You don't need to pay attention to the length of your breath, just that facilitation of redirecting your attention. Breath, feet, feet, breath, ground, air, air, and ground. Space. Apologies for the noise. So when you're ready, come back to center. And then take your attention back to your feet. Feel into all four corners. Great. And then when you're ready, we'll come back to a seated posture together. So the point of the breathing redirection practice is related to the point brought up about not being able to pay attention to the signals of the body, or ignoring the signals of the body when they come up, or not feeling like we have the ability to communicate our needs when we're with other people, or even with ourselves, not knowing how to reach for that. So in the ability to redirect our attention from feet to breath, we're giving ourselves something to pay attention to and something that can potentially distract us from one task or the other. And so the purpose of that is, I want you to go out into the world today, and literally your workplace, just a little sort of homework idea, doesn't have to be done, just something to explore, is while you're having a conversation with someone, or doing something, see if you can continually refer back to your body. Like, I have a body. And it can literally be as simple as saying that to yourself in your mind, if you don't want to say that out loud. Like, I have a body. And so every time you're doing that, you're allowing yourself to realize and reference I have the capacity to take care of myself, coming back to that. And as you're starting to recognize that, you may be able to strengthen your ability to communicate those needs in public or even to yourself. And so that's a really great skill for co-regulation and self-regulation. Yeah, so that's the education piece on that. So this is the time where I ask you if you want to offer any words to your practice, what you noticed, what stood out for you. And also know, I know there's 2 new people here, that you do not need to speak to your experience. You may feel like you're still digesting it and may not want to share some things about it. That's totally cool. But just a time to debrief and realize that we probably have a lot of things in common as we do superhuman things, realizing that we're humans all at the end. So I'm gonna stop the recording and then we can chime in.